Shweta Chopra, the Vice Chairperson, warmly welcome each one of you present here. Indeed, it's our pleasure to have with us this morning Mr. Ganesh and Prabhu. Mr. Prabhu is the Professor of Strategy at the IIM Bangalore. He teaches, researches, and coordinates executive programs on strategy, entrepreneurship, design thinking, and product innovation. He has won awards for both teaching and research, and his work has been published in the leading management journals. He has been nominated member of the Design Council that is involved with the design education. He was nominated as the top writer on the Quora in 2017. Please welcome Mr. Prabhu. Can we have a thunderous applause, though we are less of us? Welcome, sir.
Okay, since a lot of you are from the fashion and design industry, I thought I will take you through an example of from your industry itself. But the basic focus of my talk would be on what is strategy and how you can use strategic thinking to do better in your own business. So that's essentially the focus of what I'll be covering today. So what is strategic management? Of course, it's a subject that is being covered in an MBA program in most business schools, but it is something that is not necessarily well understood. It's not something that is understood in the practice of business, but it has potential to do better, to help you do better. So essentially, what is strategy comes from answering these 4 questions, okay, and answering those questions adequately is useful and sort of sets your thinking forward in terms of what you could do. So first is, what is your mission? Okay, what do you want to achieve through your business or through your? It can be a mission from a career point of view. It could be a mission from a business point of view. Then the second question is, what business are you in? As you saw in the talk by Mr. Fadnis, you could be in different types of businesses. You could be at the so-called luxury business, or you could be in the mid-rung fashion business, or you could be in everyday wear. You know, they are all very different types of businesses which are looking at very different sets of customers. So defining what business are you in and being more clear about it. And of course, this is not something you define on day one. As you can see in the talk, he's talked about how it took him several years to define the business much more precisely. But now he is much more clearer about what business they are in. Then third, is it an attractive business? Is it a business that has profit potential? And if it does not have profit potential, but you have a lot of interest in it, how can you make it more attractive? In the sense, how can you take decisions or do things that can make that business more attractive? And lastly, the question is it the right business for you? That is it something that appeals to you from your own perspective? Does it utilize your resources and competencies? Is it something that you are good at? So as you can see, the last two questions are essentially, one is outside looking, which means you're looking at whether the business is attractive, does it have profit potential, are there buyers for such a product? So that's outside looking. And the last question is inside looking. That is, you're looking inside at your own ability, your own capability, the sort of resources that you have, and can you do well on that, and can you improve on that? Okay. So if you answer these 4 questions, essentially you are on your way to having clarity about what business you are in. Is it a good business or not? And if it's not a good business, can you make it better? If you do not have the resources, for example, Mr. Fadnis was saying that he has not gone through fashion school at all, but he has learned it on his own. So you can build those resources, you can build your capability from within, and both of them combined makes the business much better. Okay. So let me start with what is your mission. Essentially, what do you need to cover in your mission. So how do firms define their mission? They start by talking about what business they are doing, what values they stand for, and what vision do they have. Okay, so the business, nature of the business, whether it's a fashion business or a luxury business, then what are the values that you stand for? I mean, what will you do and what will you not do? So of course there are some basic values in terms of how you run a business, but will you tweak that will you, for example, do things which are not considered acceptable in your business, but which you believe is good and positive? Will you be willing to stretch yourself to do that? And then what do you eventually want to be, which is the vision. And essentially the mission communicates with all stakeholders. It guides the evolution of the firm over time, and it also helps in implementing what the strategy is. Okay. So how do you write an effective mission statement? Essentially, the mission statement should identify the firm uniquely, be short and meaningful, yet be broad and flexible. So obviously you can see there is some contradiction between the second and the third. So it has to be short and meaningful, but it also has to be broad and flexible. And that's not easy to do. So it's not really easy to write a mission statement, but when you write it and you it represents what you do, it turns out to be a good source for bringing people along. So Levers, which is the Unilever company, their mission statement, which they put up more than 100 years back, was reducing the chores of housewives. Okay, which may not be a very correct, politically correct statement to make today, but 100 years back, it was an acceptable statement. But if you look at that company even today, after 100 years, it still actually does that. It might say, you might use a different term for the last word there, but essentially the company's business is still in that range. It is in all sorts of products which are helping helping people who are working within a household. Okay, and that's really not changed much for that company over more than 100 years. So that's the nature of a mission statement. If a mission statement is written well, it actually communicates that very well. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so the next question is, what business are you in? How do you define your business? It could be in 3 dimensions, and these 3 dimensions are who is your customer, okay, who is your target group that you are addressing to, what are the needs that are being satisfied, okay. For that target group, there may be different needs. So what you wear for a wedding will be different from what you wear when you're going for a movie. So these are different needs, and which need are you catering to, okay. And then third, how are you going to do it? Typically, the first and second needs to be very clear. The third can change over a period of time. So if you look at the Levers statement, reducing the chores of housewives, it covers actually 2 dimensions. It says that the target is the housewife, and the need that you are covering is how do I reduce the effort that is required by housewives, and that's the need that is being fulfilled. So 2 dimensions are covered. The third is not covered, which is what is the technology or how you will do it is not covered. That's because over 100 years, different technologies may have come. So new chemical technologies may have reduced the nature of detergents or various things that are being made. The technologies may change. So how is the need actually being satisfied can change over a period of time, but who's the target customer has not changed for 100 years, and what need is being satisfied has also not changed over 100 years for this company, and that's worth looking at. Okay, so if you can define very clearly what is your need, what is the need you are looking at, and what is the customer, then those 2 are sort of anchor points for you in terms of defining what you will do over a period of time. Okay, so but the technology with which you will do it, for example, earlier you didn't have cell phones, you could not use social media. Today you can do that. So the technology that you will use to satisfy those needs may change over a period of time. The third question is about is it an attractive business, and how do you know whether it's an attractive business or not? Basically, you look at there is what is called an industry analysis which is done. So essentially, it's an external analysis. We look at what are the external opportunities and threats. Okay, so what are the opportunities in the local market, international market? Yeah, yes. Yes. So whether the business has profit potential or not, it's your own business that we are talking about. So you look at the external analysis of it, which means looking at external opportunities and threats. Okay, and what we essentially focus on is, can you take advantage of some opportunities which are there and counter any threats? You know, so let's say discounting has become a threat in your business. How can you counter that threat very well? Can you do things which reduce the need for discounting? Okay, so you have to find ways by which you can counter something which is threatening the business or reducing the profit potential, and other side you can see whatever is growing. For example, if the fashion consciousness is growing, that becomes an advantage for you. You can take it forward. And how effectively are major competitors handling this issue? The third and the last question is it the right business for you? Okay, so then you are looking at the internal analysis. So in the internal analysis, essentially you're looking at your internal strengths and weaknesses. What are you good at? What are you not good at? Okay, and how well can you deal with your weaknesses? Can you counter those weaknesses? Can you cover those weaknesses? So for example, Mr. Fadnis was saying that he doesn't know how to sketch. Okay, so that's a weakness, right? But he has other ways to deal with it. So he has people who are good at sketching, and he tells them how to sketch it and how to, and he uses that as a basis for countering a weakness. But in effect, what has happened is, because there are so many others doing the sketching, there is a lot more variety which is coming out. So if 5 people sketch based on what he says, there may be 5 different sketches which are coming out, and one of them may be better than what he thought about. So in fact, the output may be much more effective than if he had sketched it himself, right? Yes, it could be vice versa also. Yeah. So yes. So what we are looking at is there may be weaknesses, there may be things that you don't have, but you are using others, or you're using other methods by which, and those are interesting ways by which you can counter a weakness. But of course, if you have a strength, which is obviously his strength is his ability to identify good design, and when he was talking outside about how he came to an exhibition, he saw particular designers from Jaipur's collection and wanted to buy the entire collection. He said, this entire collection will sell in my store much better, right? So your ability to spot very good work and immediately recognize that that is saleable is the strength, and that strength he has been able to utilize very effectively in taking those very on-the-spot decisions, which otherwise, other people who are not in that, who don't have that strength, cannot take that decision. They'll have to say, I have to do market research, I have to figure this out, whereas he can simply do it, right? So you have to use your strengths and deal with your weaknesses. And can you compete more effectively by taking advantage of your strengths and correcting any of these weaknesses? And how are competitors doing the same thing, right? How effective are your resources and your capabilities vis-a-vis competitors? So what is the sequence by which you create a strategy? And this is an important point here, because a lot of people start off by looking at opportunities. But what is being said here is that the sequence should start with what are your resources, right? So the typical problem that happens is you say there are lots of jobs for engineers, so let everybody become an engineer. It's a bad idea. You should do engineering only if it makes sense for you. Similarly, if you say there are lots of opportunities for fashion designers, so everybody should become a fashion designer, won't work. Unless you have the skill and ability for fashion design, it will not work at all. So your starting point for even for businesses should be, what are your resources? Okay, what do you have? What you can do? And can I seek opportunities for better utilization of those resources? So I have, let's say, a setup. I have, let's say, the family has a certain set of resources which are already available. I should start with looking at what can I do better with those resources. Then look at your own capabilities. What can you do differently? What can you do better than others? And see how can I apply those, what opportunities are there to better apply those capabilities. So I have a skill for identifying, good design, that can I use that skill in some way. I have a skill for choreography. Can I use that skill effectively, right? And then you see where you have an advantage. Where are you able to do better than anybody else? And if you are able to do, identify those, that's where you can enter. And then the next step, of course, may follow over a period of time. Can you sustainably appropriate the gains from that advantage? The issue is that sometimes you have an advantage, but somebody else may take the gains out of it. So let's say you are good at design, but the customer doesn't want to pay for design. Then eventually the customer gets a good design at a low price because you are not able to charge the premium. You are not able to so essentially your work is being exploited by the customer because of the low prices that you're charging. So can you reverse that situation in some way? So the question then is, how do I do it? Can I do it by better branding? Can I do it by better locating the place where I sell the product? All sorts of options are there which you can use to see how if you have an advantage, you are very good at something, can you use it better? But as you can see from this sequence, we start with appraising resources and competencies. That means internally, what are you good at? And then you look at externally where there is an opportunity. But if you start with external first, you might make a mistake. For example, if you say externally there is a lot of opportunity, but internally you don't have the strengths to match it, you end up being also ran in that industry. So that can be avoidable, right? So if you start with your own internal analysis, should come before external analysis. That's really what is being said here. So I'll just give you an example of a company which you might be familiar with which is Zara. Zara is considered to be the first company which has been in this so-called fast fashion business. Now, what is fast fashion? Of course, a lot of people claim that they are in fast fashion. I had an interesting conversation with one of the two major companies in India, which is in the fashion business, and one of them claimed that they do fast fashion, and it was very clear from looking at how they are doing it that it was not fast fashion, right? So there is a mismatch in terms of how this term has been used. So let me just briefly explain what this is and how Zara is able to get an advantage out of it. So essentially, there are 4 types of ways in which you can do business in the fashion industry. One is you do what is the traditional thing, which is you produce a certain quantum of fashion products for a season, and then you launch it. Okay, so you produce for about 3 months and you launch it in a big way with a road show or a ramp show. And that's the traditional approach, and a lot of companies have been doing that, and they continue to do that. So that's the traditional fashion industry approach. The other is you can go for the other 2 points which are mentioned here, which is you do enhanced design, you go for the high end. That is, you create products which are meant only for a very small niche audience, okay, and you create new design trends. So whenever an actor or somebody on the stage wears your costumes, a lot of people start buying it. It becomes a trend. But you sort of set the trend. So okay, that's another approach. The third approach is what you will see, for example, on the fashion street in Bombay, which is, you have very quickly copied fashion, right? People, something is released in the stores within 1 week or 10 days, that fellow will have it in Fashion Street at maybe 1/10 the price. Okay, so that's another approach, and it works. There's no major activity happening in terms of design thinking and all that. You just whatever sells is directly replicated. That's another way of being in the industry. But what Zara did was the fourth thing, which is a bit different from this, which Zara did in almost what the Fashion Street people are doing. Okay, but it was not limited to that. So they were also, in a sense, setting the trends, and they were very quick at figuring out what was going to click in the market, and they would bring those clothes very fast into the market. Right. So within 2 weeks, you would have something which has been worn by an actor on the stage or in a movie. Within 2 weeks, it will be there in the stores. Right. So one is that you are quick at identifying what is clicking or what is likely to be popular in the market, and you are able to do it very fast and bring it into the market. Right. So that, yeah, sure.
The question is, this is only pertaining to fashion industry. What about
Yeah.
other industries?
Well, this is the example I'm giving is about the fashion industry. We can discuss about other industries in the Q&A. Yeah, sure. So I'll just give you an example. Yeah. So now what Zara had to do was to be able to do it fast. Of course, is not something that's easy to do. Okay, so you have to produce in certain lot sizes. You have to distribute it across the country and across multiple countries. So that's a difficult thing to do, which is one part of the problem. The other part of it is that seeing a particular image, which is there very clearly in the let's say, which is a trend which they are seeing, they come up with versions of that. So what the actor may have worn in a particular movie, multiple versions of that are created and put into the market. So, and some advances, some changes, some variations are created, and people actually are able to pick up those, not just the exact same thing which has been done in that version. Okay, and that comes through their ability to look at what customers want. So when a customer walks in, they say, I like this product, I want to buy it, but it's not in the right color. I want this in a different color. Is it available in a different color? You say, no, it's available only in one color. But 2 weeks later, that different color is also available in that store. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that Zara is able to do, which is a fast reaction to customer feedback, which of course most the ones who are doing the traditional design cannot do at all. They will not be able to function in that manner at all. So what is Zara's focus? It's very clear. Who's their customer? Their focus is on fickle, fashionable young women with a high fashion sensitivity. That's how they started off. Now, of course, they have a men's collection also. But in the men's collection also, I suppose it's fickle, fashionable young men with high fashion sensitivity. Broad product line, but relatively standardized across all countries. Rapid product variations, but limited price variation. So they will create 2-3 versions. Somebody doesn't like the color, they will give them a different color. All that they will do, but price would more or less stay the same. They will not sort of bring down the price or give a discount, easily, right? Freshness in stocks at all time, but with a deliberate creation of scarcity. So you have only some 4 pieces there. If you don't buy it now, next week it's not there. That sort of thing would happen, and it happens naturally because they don't produce in very large quantities. They just distribute whatever quantities they produce across their stores. And word of mouth buzz, which is based on store window marketing, not print advertising. They do very little of print advertising, more of display. Okay, but this is what you see from the outside. Okay, what happens internally is more interesting. And what actually Zara is able to do is what is called fast, quick response plus enhanced design. So they have the product. So their target user is one who loses the product by waiting to buy, and is willing to pay a reasonable price for a trendy product. And Zara gets higher returns from fast fashion. Okay, and I'll show you how that calculation works. It also reduces the quantity that goes in for clearances, and is therefore more profitable than most of its traditional competitors. So how does that work? So what they do is they have a very large number of stores in Spain. So Zara is based in Spain. So they have a very large number of stores in Spain. So every street you will have 2-3 stores, Zara stores, and they are not necessarily all big stores. They are fairly small stores. And their pricing is very value-based in the sense that it's good pricing, it's low pricing, it's not premium pricing at all within there. So in Spain, Zara is almost a everyday wear brand, which is difficult for people who are outside Spain to even conceptualize, because Zara is seen as a more expensive product outside. So what they have done is, if I will show you the price difference in these markets. So what they are doing is they are trying to get a large volume, maybe 70% of the volume sold in Spain itself, and 30% of the volume is being sold outside Spain, right? So they get their volumes through Spain sales, and therefore they can produce using automation. So they can produce instead of, if the price point was kept as the same as outside Spain, they may have been able to sell 20 pieces, but now they are able to make 100 pieces, sell about 70 of them outside in Spain and 30 of them outside Spain, and therefore have a much better scale economies, right? So the discounting is very low in Spain, the product moves very fast, and they get the volumes in Spain, and in the other markets, they overprice it. They price it much higher than in Spain itself. And that's why they are able to make a higher margin on the sales which are outside Spain. So this particular approach is what makes Zara much more profitable than some other companies which are working probably at the same volume. So the same product is positioned as more premium elsewhere, 40% higher in North Europe, 10% higher in the rest of Europe, okay? So in the rest of Europe, outside Spain, it is semi-premium, and but of course well below the premium brands which are there. So all the designer brands in Europe would be much higher than Zara, but it would be slightly higher than what is the price in Spain. And this is the typical difference, 40% and 10%. But so you can see that Zara in Spain, if you look at this as a pyramid, the consumer pyramid as it's called, so you have the bottom, which is the larger chunk of the market. Zara in Spain is somewhere below the middle, okay? And then if you, it'll go slightly higher in North Europe, okay, where the pricing is 40% higher. And the same product is positioned as even more premium in the outside Europe. So it's 70% higher in the Americas and 100% higher in Japan. Right? So the same product is priced at much higher levels. And of course, you don't have too many stores selling Zara in outside in these locations. There are fewer stores and they are more premium. So there what Zara has done is to put those stores next to premium brands. So wherever all the premium brands are located, Zara would be located in the same place. And the premium pricing helps them there in the outside Europe. Okay, so you can see that it's slightly more premium. In India, I don't know what is the pricing because this data is slightly older, but it's premium actually. In India, it's considered as a premium brand, but I don't think it will be as high as US. So it will be slightly between them. It will be about 50% higher than Spain, is my guess. I'm not really sure. 10% higher also. It's just 10% higher than Spain, is it? No, I'm asking. Yeah, it's about 40-50% higher than Spain. So the same product will be available in Spain at a lower price. So a lot of people actually go to Spain to buy Zara, because the people who are in the you are one of them. Yeah. So that's what happens. So in the same pyramid it's much higher in US and Japan, and this is where they get their volumes are lesser, but they make more money in these markets, and therefore overall Zara is more profitable, even though it is selling at very low premiums in other market, in their home market. So this gives you actually this is from a case which was written on Zara long back, so it may not be very current information, but it gives you an interesting way of looking at how does it compare with your competitors. So the markdowns are lower, as I have mentioned earlier. The markdowns on Zara are lower, very little being sold with through sales. So average markdown from competitors is 10.5, and it's just 2.63 on Zara. Okay, so therefore your average selling price, and remember Zara's selling price would be slightly lower than the competitors. Okay, so that's why the 100 to 100 is not exactly the same. There may be a 20-30% difference between the competitors' prices and Zara's prices. So Zara's prices are a bit lower. Okay, but then you have average selling price is 97.38, and manufacturing cost, if it's 50%, which is the average in that industry. So even though the manufacturing cost as a percentage is higher, you can see the gross margin is higher. So you see the gross margin is 48.69 compared to 44.745 for the competitors. And then they also save on doing lesser on advertising. So their advertising budgets and the display spend and so on is much lower. And so overall, you after adjusting for the advertising, Zara makes 45.77 as margin compared to the competitors who make 41. But also, the other factor which is not mentioned here is that they don't have a lot of dead inventory. So that also, of course, you can say that it is considered in the markdown, but there's also the question of how much of inventory do you carry over long periods of time. So since the Zara cycle itself is shorter, most of the inventory is gone within 2 to 3 weeks. So they don't have, yeah. So.
In Spain, they have an outlet called Lefties.
Yeah.
All the dead stock
Huh.
sell in those stores.
Yeah.
Lefties.
Okay.
I would like to say about that.
Yeah.
Lefties has another production level, and Zara doesn't sell anything to Lefties. Lefties is another brand, low-end brand like Vishal Gardens. So it's a mistake. There is no dumping of Zara into Lefties.
Yeah. Okay. From what I know from the case, it says that, yeah. Yeah. So, from what I understand from the case, which is a bit older, so it's not a very updated case, what they say is that they do the minimum discounting and sales in Spain itself. But they do, whenever they send it to distant markets, for example, Japan, if they are marked it up by 100%, okay, they would have a sale there, and they would probably sell some of the product at 50% discount. But that would be relatively rare. Okay, so but the idea is that if it's gone to a distant market, bringing it back and trying to sell it in another market does not work out. So they just dispose it off in the local market. But in Spain or in Europe, the sales are very, very minimal. Only for some things which are defective or something that may be a sale, but not for products which are in good shape. Right? So there's another aspect of it, which is how they utilize the space within the store. And you can see that here, I will mention it in the next slide, but what you see here is the products which are on the tables and on the shelf, which is at eye level, is all fast-moving products. And those which are above and below are the slow-moving products. So essentially, they get those slow-moving products are shoes or bags. So those are higher margin, slower-moving products. They're using the same space for both. So effectively, they are able to get good margins from the higher margin products. They are able to sell those products in the same space as they are selling the fast-moving products. So the space utilization is much better. Now the same product, if it was shoes and leather bags and leather shoes, which if it is sold by some other brand, a luxury brand, they would have to devote space only for that. Here the same space is being used for both, and therefore it brings down their cost of selling the product also. So essentially they use lower shelves and tables for fashion products and higher shelves for luxury products. And as a result, the way they manage the store also is reasonably okay. So, for example, the products which are lying above the eye level, they don't have to be dealt with too much. Once in a while somebody would ask for it, and there's another trick in this, which is if the product is so high, it's not reachable very easily by most customers. So, if a customer is really interested, they will ask you to bring it down. And that gives an opportunity for the person who is in the store to talk to you about the product. Okay, so you can't really examine the product yourself. So, I can probably do that because I am a bit taller, but for most women it may be difficult to reach that product at all in the first place, and therefore it gives you an opportunity for you to have a conversation with the potential customer about the product. Otherwise, Zara stores are fairly low staffed. There are not too many people out there to talk to you. But this gives them an opportunity to try to get into a conversation with potential customers. So they have higher returns on the luxury with the low floor use, and fashion products are not outsourced, but luxury products are outsourced locally. So they make their own, they use their automated plants to make the fashion products, but the luxury products are outsourced to good suppliers. So that's the combination which they have used, which has given them a higher profitability than either luxury goods stores or pure fashion goods stores. And their logistics for both of these are also very different. Right? Yeah, so any questions on this before we go forward? Any questions on the Zara story? So the question, therefore, is you may ask is how easy it's for somebody else to do it. So I started off by saying one of the two major companies in India was saying that they do fast fashion when they don't, right? Why is it difficult for somebody to do this type of an approach? What would be, huh?
They have presence already, they are in this field and they have enough of resources
to okay.
And I guess they are also working on their logistics and supply chain management.
Yeah.
And their automation.
Yeah. So it's that part of it is actually very difficult to replicate because you need the volumes to automate. So if they don't have volumes, then you can't really automate the entire thing, and then it becomes very difficult for if you're following some other production model, then you will not get the sort of economies that Zara is able to get. So it becomes difficult. One is the speed at which you are able to deliver, the other is the cost at which you are able to deliver. Both are very high. The speed is better as well as the cost is low in this case. So to be able to replicate it means you need to have the volumes that Zara is having, and that is very difficult. You can replicate other parts of it. For example, how do you handle the design activity, or how do you handle the merchandising and the retail activity, but getting the volumes is more difficult. And that's why Zara has about, in a sense, grown over a period of time by leveraging this very well. Others have not been able to grow to that extent. Of course, there are a lot of companies which are in niche markets, which are, of course, much more lucrative, but they're much smaller. So there are, in terms of size, Zara has grown to become the largest player in the world in this industry. Yeah.
How does this change in a B2B scenario?
B2B in the sense you are selling to other businesses in terms of volumes. Yeah. It may not change too much. It just depends on whether the volumes that are being, you are talking in the fashion industry or other?
Other industries.
Okay.
Export basically.
Yeah.
If the domestic market is not your market.
Yeah.
If export is the market, how do you deal with volumes and
Yeah. So.
the pricing?
So there the issue is about your ability to get a good price. So for example, if you are making, let's say, uniforms for the army, you have to go through the tendering process and you have to bid, and you can't probably charge a very high price. But if your cost structure is very effective, you can control your costs very well, you can be profitable. So that's, there are uniforms of various types. There are large orders which are more standardized, which can be taken up and it can be a lucrative sort of a backbone to your business. So it provides you regular funds, and it gives you some continuity and volume, whereas the consumer B2C part of it may be much more fluctuating. So that's another way to look at it. At least if you are able to get a combination of B2B and B2C, that can be a good balance. For example, those who are doing online sales, they have this big issue of how do you manage because the online sales need not be very consistent. They keep going up and down, right? So if you have a set of products, you can have online sales, but you also need to have some presence in retail. And I know one company which does that. So they have been, there's a company called Rangrej, which is based in Indore. What they do is they sell a lot of products online. They also have their own store. But to maintain the balance, they have a large presence in the airport stores. So the airport stores give them steady market. So there is always a certain consignment required every month from the airport stores. But the online sales are very erratic. So sometimes you might get sales, sometimes you may not get sales. So since they employ artists to do the work, so artists will, sort of leave them if they don't get regular work. So they outsource it to artists. So artists would say, unless you give me regular work, I'll leave this. I'll find other things to do. So to be able to maintain that balance, they find that this combination works well. So you have at least 30-40% of the sales are coming through, very steady sales are coming through the airports, stores, and the rest of it is coming through online. So this is a combination of B2B and B2C. The airport is the B2B sale. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, so I'll just close with one basic chart, and then if there are any further questions, we'll take it up. So essentially, what is the fundamental question in strategy? It's a question of why are some firms more successful than others? Okay. And essentially, that's a question that is unanswered. We can, so however much you study this, you can never answer it fully. So, but there are two perspectives to this question. One is the external perspective, which is saying that is the industry a good industry to be in? If the industry is good in the sense that customers are willing to pay premiums, the cost is low, there is good margin, people are willing to buy lots of your product, then it's a favorable industry, and therefore profitability will be good. And that will be true for all the companies in the industry, right? But some companies are better at adapting themselves to that industry situation. So that's the industrial organization perspective, which comes from economics, which basically says that if you are in a good industry and you have well adapted to that industry, you will do better. Okay? But then some will do better than others based on how well they are adapted. So that's one perspective, right? The other is saying that it depends on your resources. Do you have good designers? Do you have good craftspeople? Do you have relationships with very good buyers and B2B contracts? Those are your resources, and those can give you a superior benefit. So try and build. So you need to do a combination of both. This is not either or, right? You need to look at what resources you have and do as much as possible to make those resources more effective and more, if resources are getting depleted, people are leaving you, you have to hire better people, you have to train them. All those are resource-related initiatives. Similarly, on the other side, you have to look at what is happening outside, see where there are new opportunities, new markets are opening up, new places are going to buy your product, and then you see how you can add that. So it's a continuous search for how do you make a business profitable. It's a continuous search. It's not something you decide once and for all and then leave it. It's a continuous search, in both external search as well as internal search, and seeing how you can come up with new ways to do things. And Zara found a way to do it. They have been successful, but then other companies have found their own way. But by just trying to copy what Zara does may not work for everyone, because Zara has the volumes, they can do better. you may not have the volumes at this stage to do better. They are, so what you need to look at is what can you do better, what can you do more effectively, and see if you can leverage that. That's the internal side. And on the external side, what are the new opportunities which can work? Okay. Yeah. Yes.
So, what is the exact criteria on which students get calls from IIMs or other MBA colleges for GD and PI like na? We have observed, I have actually observed it,
Okay.
that students with lower percentiles and lesser work experience sometimes get calls. And ones with higher CAT scores and more work experience doesn't get called. This is like often I have seen many times. So what is the exact criteria they are looking for? Is
Okay,
it something?
this is outside the topic, but
yes.
okay, but
I really want it.
I'll
not interest everyone to have this.
yeah.
But I think most mothers, they really want to know this.
Okay,
But
I'll
you
just
can
answer it in
private,
in a
basically.
few
it's
seconds.
okay.
Yeah. So the criteria is very clearly given on our website. We don't change it. Okay, it's there very clearly. It's on the website. It tells you exactly what are the weightages for different things. What happens is that those who are from non-engineering backgrounds, even with the lower score, can be shortlisted. Those who are from engineering have to score better to get shortlisted, just because the number of engineers is larger, and we have some weightage for non-engineers. So that's why it happens. But the weightages are very clearly given on the website. So there is if you want, I can give you the link on where it is there. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. When you're strategizing,
Yes.
it's attached to a timeline.
Huh.
So what is that period if you're not able to achieve your strategy during the timeline?
Okay.
What is the leverage period that you should take and re-strategize
Yeah.
or make changes in your strategy?
Yeah.
What is that?
So you need to keep track of what are the signals you are getting that your strategy is wrong. So for example, those signals will come all the time. So for example, if you put up a collection, if you look at it in the fashion side, if you put up a collection and nobody is buying it, or then that's one signal. But a more important thing is to figure out why people are not buying it. So if you have a conversation with people, they say, yes, I have this, or there may be a variety of things that they may say, but if there are one or two key things which are making a difference, that's where you are getting an indication that maybe what you are offering is not what is wanted in the market. And then that's the internal assessment. And the external assessment is what is actually selling in the market, and see what is working there. And then you see what can you do, because after all, you are making a unique product. So it's not that there is a exact product available, but you are looking at patterns from others. And if you're getting very clear signals, that's the time to change. There is no timeline to it. So you might want to relook at what you're doing and see what changes are required. But there's no timeline to making that. It's the signals that you're getting from the market which tell you that. So if it's a fast changing industry, like for example, if you're in cell phone business, things are changing really fast. You keep your schemes or what your pricing and all is outdated, you will quickly realize it because people are not buying your product at all, right? So you get that signal very fast. You need to change. So that's depends a lot on the industry. Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to know, is the strategy to disrupt the market works?
Strategy which?
Disruptive market.
Yeah, which disrupts the market. Well, it could work. It depends on what is the nature of that disruption. So, for example, you can disrupt the market by giving steep discounts, right? That may not make you very successful. That is a problem. So, you have to look at what specifically are you doing which is disrupting the market. But the idea is that if there is a trend or there is a signal in the market that you have been able to catch on and others have not sort of picked it up, maybe you can do that first, and before others follow, you become the lead player on that signal. So that's way to do it. Yeah. Anything else? No.
Anybody has a question? Vikram, you have a question?
Okay.
Listening. I just want to know more
Yeah.
about the strategy with competitive orientation, because the competition
Huh.
So what are those strategies that can deal with competition?
Well, there's nothing like
Strategies for that matter.
there's nothing like
More on offensive and defensive strategies.
uh, there's nothing like a strategy which works for everyone. Okay, if it was there, we would know what to do. But if you look at this sequence, this is a good way to do it, and this is fairly universal. You can say that if you start with what are your resources, what are you good at, and then look at what can you do better with what you have. That's a good starting point, and that can actually make it work. But for each company, the way to do it can be very different, right? So there is nothing like the same thing works, for everyone. But this process can be very fruitful. Okay, whoever does it, right? If it is done authentically, if it is done with clarity, then it's more likely to work. You can say.
I would like to know about marketing strategies.
Huh.
Different industries.
What about marketing in the sense?
In today's scenario, like I think what she means is in today's world, the business scenario has gone totally a 180-degree.
Yeah.
So I think she's asking for that kind of a strategy, that what businesses should do so that they can market themselves well.
Yeah, so of course there is a session on social media marketing, which I think is a very important aspect. So how well you can use social media marketing is making a big difference. So your reach is not, earlier the reach was, if you had a store in Jaipur, your reach was to people who frequented Jaipur or are from Jaipur. That is not anymore the case. You can sell anywhere in the country and probably elsewhere in the world also. But some of the parameters have not changed. For example, if you create a website, how do you get people to come to your website is a big question mark. So if your website is not known, people don't know that they can order from your website. So some of the requirements to create publicity still remain the same. And those have to be, the traditional route is what is people are being used. For example, Flipkart puts a full page ad, right? And those sort of things are making a difference. Otherwise, Flipkart need not advertise as much, but still they do it because they have the money to do it. But in many ways, you have to create more traction to the website. So that's one route, and social media marketing helps you do that without spending too much. So that's one approach that has changed quite a bit over the last few years. The other traditional routes remain the same. I mean, the traditional routes are not bad. It's just that this is an additional thing that has been created more recently through technology, which is enabling better marketing. Okay.
Can we clap loudly?